Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In this week's video we travel back to the beautiful county of Monmouthshire in Wales. This now ruined castle is set against the beautiful lush hills, which form a backdrop to Abergavenny town. Your visit offers you a castle and a museum in just one visit, not to mention it being a free attraction, famed for its disturbing Christmas Day massacre. So why not join us here at Abergavenny Castle and Museum? The original castle was a typical Norman motte-and-bailey style, built by the Norman lord Hamelin de Ballon around 1087 to guard the River Usk and the lowland areas, complete with a surrounding ditch and wooden palisade walls. But soon after, in the 1100s, a stone keep was built out to replace the wooden keep. In the 1160s, Henry Fitzmiles, the first Earl of Hereford and Lord of Abergavenny, was killed, reputably by Cecil ap Dymchwel. Without a male heir, the lordship and the castle passed to Henry's daughter, Bertha's husband, William de Braose. William rebuilt features of the castle and added the curtain wall, parts of which remain today. In 1175, the castle was the scene of an infamous massacre. Like the town itself, the castle seemed gentle, calm, possibly a place of rest and refuge. There is nothing left to suggest the horrifying scenes that would take place on that very soil late in the 12th century. Despite Henry's death working in his favour, William de Braose, the successor to the castle, sought to end once and for all the ceaseless conflict with his men and the warring local factions. To that end, and to avenge Henry's death, he rather foolishly took it upon himself to orchestrate one of the most underhand and bloody events in Welsh history. I'll set the scene as we walk in the remains. A royal feast was arranged for Christmas in 1175. Goodwill to all was promised, reconciliation and a chance to air grievances and to begin the new year with a clean slate. Unarmed, with their weapons left outside as a show of trust and honour, Cecil and other leading Welsh noblemen, along with their sons and other high-ranking men, made their way into the castle in pursuit of Christmas joy and merriment. Once inside the great hall, pleasantries were made and festive drinks shared, with the sounds of laughter and music playing throughout the hall. However, a signal was passed, the doors were bolted, and de Braose's cruel intentions were laid bare. William watched from afar as his enemies enjoyed their hospitality and delighted in the thoughts of them being unable to know what's coming next. In an act of merciless and unthinkable cruelty, William signalled again to his men to enact his bloody plan, and within moments the hall was in complete chaos. Every guest was brutally murdered, and they attacked adults and children alike. Not yet satisfied with the bloodshed and the harm that he had reacted, de Braose left on horseback alongside his men to finish off this most monstrous killing spree, eventually murdering Cecil's wife and only surviving son and heir. The night had been brutal, and it earned William the nickname of the Ogre of Abergavenny. Weirdly enough, his actions were forgiven, as he was a firm favourite of King John of England, and later would take up the post of Sheriff of Herefordshire. But as the old saying goes, karma will come back to bite you. But it took until 1182 for there to be any significant act of retribution for this unhallowed of nights, when the castle was stormed and set alight by the Lord of Caerleon. William was said to have fled to Ireland and was later seen in France, where he lived out the remainder of his life. Yet William's son and wife were taken to Corfe Castle and are said to have been starved to death in the dungeons. The massacre has even said to inspire the infamous Red Wedding scene in Game of Thrones, one of the much-loved series' most memorable and shocking moments. The castle was then rebuilt in 1190 from local red sandstone to make it more defensible, where 5 towers were built along the curtain wall in addition to a new keep. The largest part of Abergavenny Castle still standing is on the southwest side. This area used to consist of two towers, one polygonal and the other circular. This part of the castle was built at the same time as the town walls and possibly paid for using murage grants. And it is likely that a stone keep was built on top of the motte during this period of 1241 to 1246. Later, in 1295, John de Hastings, the Lord of Abergavenny, obtained murage grants, as did his son John de Hastings the Younger in 1314. This suggests that Abergavenny Castle and town gained the majority of their stone defences sometime between 1295 and 1319. The archaeological evidence further supports this, demonstrating similarities in design of the tower complex and features with other late 13th century stone castles in Wales. In 1404, the town of Abergavenny was sacked and burned by Welsh forces during the rebellion of Owain Glyndwr. The castle barbican dates from around that period. And a year later, in 1405, the castle was garrisoned with 80 mounted soldiers and 400 archers. During the siege, St Mary's Priory was burned, causing some of the monks to return to France. William Beauchamp, the then Lord of Abergavenny, was required to remain to defend the castle and town from the Welsh rebellion until 1409. Further attacks made sure that both the town and the castle were reinforced by royalists during the Civil War. In 1645, the castle was visited twice by King Charles I, who was in Wales to raise a new army following his defeat at Naseby in June of 1645. On Charles's final visit, he ordered the destruction of the castle's living quarters in an attempt to render it uninhabitable. But this didn't stop the parliamentarian governor of Gloucester, Thomas Morgan, making the castle his base, and in 1646 the castle was then attacked by the royalists. The castle held but was badly damaged in this period. The royalists were defeated in Monmouthshire and with the surrender of Raglan Castle in August of 1646. Later, in 1647, orders were given for Abergavenny Castle to be made indefensible. The building on top of the motte now houses Abergavenny Museum. It was constructed in 1818 by the Marquis of Abergavenny as a hunting lodge. Its construction would have drastically altered in the medieval remains of the castle, and much was destroyed, most significantly the keep on top of the motte. In 1881, the grounds at Abergavenny Castle were then opened to the public, with walkways put in place around the ruined walls and towers, and they were used up until the 1930s. It's interesting to know that dances were also held in the ruined Great Hall up until the Second World War. The demolition of historic buildings in Abergavenny during the 1950s made people aware of the need for a museum in the town. In 1957, a committee was formed, and by 1959 the museum opened at the castle. The museum houses a collection of objects of local significance, with old photographs of the landscape and the town, and displays relating to the history of the area. You'll notice glass cabinets full of prehistoric tools and finds, dating from Mesolithic, Bronze and Iron Age, with axe heads and arrowheads. Other items include Roman armour, pieces from the medieval and the Tudor period, and Victorian artefacts. They also have a display of the infamous Whisky the Turnspit dog, which is really interesting to see. Perhaps the more unexpected moments that you'll find when you're visiting the rooms in the museum are the 5 permanent exhibitions that they have here, including that of a reconstruction of a World War II air raid shelter. It's quite eerie to be able to sit inside and listen to the sounds of the sirens going off, but it's also very thought-provoking too. Up until 2008, the shelter itself served as a tool shed in the back garden of an Abergavenny resident. The next part of the museum shows off a mid-19th century saddler's shop, one that would be typical in Abergavenny town. There was over 8 saddlers' shops at a time, and in the display they show off how a shop would have looked. As well as next door to this, a typical traditional Welsh kitchen that dates from around the 1960s. It is in the style of a Victorian farmhouse kitchen and incorporates a fireplace which was rescued from the Tudor Street demolitions. It's a fantastic example of the beauty of simplicity back in the 60s. The plates on the back wall remind me of how my grandparents used to display their finest china and their silverware, as does the big grandfather clock, a staple piece in those times. Possibly the most fun and interesting display for us to see is the Basil Jones grocer's shop. Interestingly, in 1994, the museum acquired a large amount of stock from a local well-known grocer named Basil Jones. Inside the display you'll notice some household favourites and see packaging from as early as the 1930s. It's pretty incredible to see the difference between then and now, and how everything has changed, gotten smaller, yet way more pricier. I love looking at the advertising on some of the products and how impactful and colourful they once were. You'll also spot Basil Jones's bike, which just adds more to its authenticity. So, although the castle has witnessed much violence and destruction over the years, its ruins still stand watch over this beautiful valley, as it has done for 1,000 years. Its centuries-long history of reuse, remodelling and repurposing continues to this day, and will likely remain to do so for years to come. The museum is also a fantastic reminder to what's being slowly forgotten. It's a great visit if you have kids too, as there are plenty of hand-on exhibits, but there is also a great deal to enjoy as adults too. As I mentioned earlier, your visit to the castle and museum is completely free, although they do rely on donations and have the friendliest of volunteers ready to help and tell you more about the town. So that's it for this week, and we really hope you've had a great visit with us today. If you have, please be sure to hit that like button, click on the notification bell and hit that subscribe button to never miss another video. We want to say a big welcome and thank you to our newest Patreon, Rachel from Britain on a Budget. We'd love it if you could pop over, give her some love and enjoy her awesome content. Her link will be in the description box below. And if you'd like to be part of the PIN family, please have a look at ways to support us. So we'll see you on the next one. Till next time.